What up? It's 2020, y'all. New unit, Biology 110, Dr. E here. Haven't showered in a few days. Can you tell? No. You might know that if you could see me, but you can't see me. I got my camera turned off, y'all. So we're starting a new unit on human anatomy. And so over the next couple of lectures, we're going to look at different aspects of the human body and how it works. And so we're going to begin with this chapter, chapter 28. Animal tissues and organ systems. And by animal, really, we're focusing on the human body, but what you're going to learn applies to most animals as well, especially mammals. Okay, so to start off, today we're going to talk about tissues and organs. What are those things, Eisenbach? I've never heard of these. Well, a tissue is simply a group of cells that function together to perform a function. Wow, that is a terrible definition. A tissue is a group of cells that work together to do the same thing. Right? So you've got different tissues, and these tissues are made up of many of the same types of cells, and those cells are all on the same team. They're built similarly. They coordinate and communicate, and those cells work together to do something. So you'll see examples of that as we progress. There's 4 types of tissues. We'll talk about each of these in more detail through the rest of the lecture. There is epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. And my guess is you know what at least half of those do just because you're smart people. But we're going to get into more details, like I said, in just a minute. Tissue comes together to form organs. So organs are just types of tissues that work together to perform a particular task. So a tissue can do a task by itself, but sometimes tissues come together to do another, perhaps more complex task by forming an organ. Right? So what organs do you have in your human body? I'm assuming your body is human. You have a heart. What does your heart do? Well, your heart pumps blood around your body and delivers oxygen and moves minerals and nutrients and so on. As an organ, what tissue is your heart made up of? Look back to that list of the 4 types of tissues. Is it epithelial, connective, muscle? Is it nervous? That's correct, kids. It's muscle tissue. So again, you'll see each organ is made out of 1 or more types of the tissues from those 4 types. All right, and then sometimes organs come together to form organ systems. So an organ system is just 2 or more organs that work together to do something. So your heart is working not by itself, but it's also working with arteries and veins. So collectively, your heart, along with your arteries and veins, make up your cardiovascular system or your circulatory system. Right? So in the next 2 slides, you're going to see some of the main organ systems in the human body. And those organ systems all work together to create an organism, like you and me. We're human. So let's look at the organ systems. So hopefully this isn't too boring. I don't have a lot of things to look at or fancy animations. But let's look at each in turn. All right, the integumentary system, this is skin. So skin is the largest organ of your body. What does your skin do? You're probably pretty bored by your skin, but your skin is exciting. It's dynamic. Your skin protects you from injury. Your skin, if it does get injured, it can heal itself, which is pretty magical. It keeps bacteria on the outside. In other words, it helps prevent bacteria or viruses or whatever from getting into your body and causing harm. In other words, in order for a disease causing pathogen to get into your body and hurt you, it's got to get through your skin. Well, it doesn't really get through your skin. It's got to get into your body through openings like your mouth or your nose or whatever. That's why you wear a mask so you don't catch coronavirus, because a virus can enter your body through your mouth or nasal passages. It can't really get absorbed through your skin. Your skin helps control your body temperature. If you get too hot, you sweat. If you get too cold, you shiver. You can excrete waste through your skin. Ew, gross. But whenever you're sweating, you can actually get rid of waste in sweat. And then your skin also can interact with your external environment. So there's nerves in your skin. They help you feel something when you touch something. And your skin, um, if the sun is shining on you, you feel it's warm, or if you touch an ice cube, you feel it's cold. So your skin helps relay signals to your brain so you can interact with the outside world. Organ system number 2 is the nervous system. So this is your brain and spinal cord and all the nerves that I was just talking about throughout your body. And so it helps you sense the outside world. It helps you think. It's where you store memory. It helps control your body organs. Your nervous system is kind of the command center of your body. So it helps coordinate your organs. If you go for a jog, you need your heart to beat faster to deliver oxygen. Then your nervous system is going to crank up the dial on your heart and have it start pumping, and so on and so forth. Muscular system's made out of muscles. What does it do? It helps you move. That's what muscles are for, y'all. They help you move. Muscles also help you generate heat. You've got an internal body temperature that's around 98.6-ish. And so muscles can actually burn ATP energy and generate heat and help keep your body temperature at the correct levels. If you get cold, for example, your muscles, the muscles that are attached to your skin might shiver, and that's a way of generating heat in a way where you're not having to move. Skeletal system. This is made up of your bones. So your bones help you stand up against gravity, so you're not a puddle on the floor. Your bones provide attachment points for your muscles, so when your muscles contract, they help you move, but they can only do that because they're attached to your bones. Your bones are also the place where you make your blood. Your blood comes from your bones. And so your bones not only make blood, but they can store blood cells, and they can store minerals like calcium and phosphorus. Your circulatory system consists of your heart and veins and arteries, and it transports stuff to all the trillions of cells in your body. So it helps move oxygen and waste and food and hormones and so on. And your circulatory system also helps you regulate your temperature. So if you get hot, then you can radiate heat. You send more blood to the surface of your body and you radiate heat. If you get cold, your body can pull blood out of your extremities, like your fingers and toes and nose, and help prevent loss of heat. The endocrine system makes hormones and controls a lot of different bodily processes and metabolic processes. And the endocrine system, basically makes hormones. Lymphatic system doesn't get a lot of love, but the lymphatic system is this system of little tubes throughout your body, and it is involved with sorry, my phone's buzzing. I got distracted. What was I saying? Phone on in class, Eisenbach. Yeah, my bad. Turn it off. Okay. Where was I? Lymphatic system. So it moves fluids throughout your body. If you start getting too many fluids in one part, your lymphatic system will drain it. And your lymphatic system also serves as a highway for your immune response. So if you get an infection, your lymphatic system will send white blood cells and other cells to the site of infection to help fight it off. So a lot of times, if you've heard that if someone's sick or maybe they've got cancer, if they're sick, maybe their lymph nodes swell up in their neck, that just shows that there's a lot of activity in that section of their lymph system as they're fighting off an infection. If cancer gets into your lymphatic system, that's bad, because cancer cells can ride the lymphatic system like a highway and invade other parts of your body. The respiratory system helps you breathe. So your respiratory system includes your lungs and your trachea, your windpipe. And so it allows you to take in oxygen, and then the oxygen is passed on to your circulatory system to be pumped throughout your body by your heart. It also gets rid of waste. Earlier in the semester, we learned about carbon dioxide and how that's a waste product of metabolism. And so you get rid of that waste molecule, CO2, by breathing it out. The digestive system, you know what this does. That's right. It helps you absorb food, nutrients that you eat. So stomach, liver, small and large intestines, etc. basically breaks down your food into smaller bits and then puts those bits of food into your blood system to be transported to all your hungry cells. Urinary system gets rid of waste in fluid form. So you basically, your kidneys filter your blood and take the waste products and send them to your bladder inside of some water, creating urine, and then you excrete pee, the urine out, and get rid of the waste that way. Reproductive system helps you make babies. Do I need to say more about that? Nah. So your body is organized into cells, which are organized into tissues, which are organized into organs, which are organized into organ systems. And those things all function together and interact with each other in order to keep you alive. Earlier I mentioned the 4 types of tissue. Here it is. Here they are again: epithelial tissue, connective, muscle, and nervous. Brief intro for each. If epithelial tissue is a thin layer of cells, and its job is to line your body surfaces. Right? So it lines your skin, which is your external body surface, and it lines your intestines and guts, which is like your internal body surface. So the epithelial tissue helps protect your body, and it helps regulate what goes in and out of your body or what goes in and out of your guts. Connective tissue is the glue and tape and staples, so to speak, of your body that holds you together. So yeah, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Muscle tissue is responsible for movement. Nervous tissue makes up your nervous system and is used for communication. All right, let's start with epithelial. Let's start with epithelial tissue. So again, it's a thin layer of cells, and it covers your external and internal areas. So one side of epithelial tissue is always exposed to parts of the world that aren't you, right? So your skin, its outer surface is exposed to the outside world and needs to protect you from it. On your guts, your epithelial tissue lines your guts, and its surface is exposed to all the parts of the outside world that you take into your body. So you take a sip of orange juice or you bite into a sandwich. That's foreign molecules that you're going to ingest, and so your internal epithelial tissues help regulate the absorption of those molecules, right? It also lines blood vessels and airways, so your veins and arteries have an internal lining of epithelium, and that helps regulate the exchange of gases or the exchange of food or nutrients or whatever. There's lots of different types of epithelial tissue, but we're not going to get into it in this class. But here's a general diagram of how epithelial tissue is constructed. So in this example, you've got one thin layer of cells, right? And below that is a connecting tissue that basically keeps this layer of cells connected to your body or to whatever part we're talking about. Next is connective tissues. So again, they connect stuff. There's 3 types, and some of these have subtypes, but the 3 types of connective tissues are loose, dense, and specialized. Loose connective tissue is stretchy, and it helps hold your skin and your organs in place, right? And the reason it's stretchy is because it has collagen in it. So collagen has a bunch of proteins, and it's nice and stretchy. It can get stretched out, and then it kind of snaps back into its place. So if you take some of your skin and pinch it and pull on it and then let go, it'll snap back into place. So thank you, loose connective tissue. Dense connective tissue isn't as loose, it's more dense, hence the clever name change. And it forms it comes in 2 types: dense irregular and dense regular. So dense irregular is oriented in different directions. So if you look at this slide, you kind of have to, use your imagination here, but the cells are all kind of stretched in different directions. And what that means is dense irregular tissue gives support, but it doesn't stretch super well, right? And so your kidneys are made out of, or have a lot of dense irregular tissue in them, for example. Dense regular tissue, the cells are more lined up. So you see this, how they're kind of all in these nice lines here. They're going more or less vertically. And so because of that, dense regular tissue can stretch. So in this example, what direction would it stretch? It's going to be able to stretch up and down pretty well. but not left and right very well. All right, so you can orient the cells in a direction or multiple directions that are going to allow them to stretch. Tendons and ligaments are made out of dense regular tissue. And so your tendons help connect your muscles to bones, and ligaments connect bones to bones. And so your tendons and ligaments need to stretch. Think of your Achilles tendon. It attaches basically your calf muscle to your heel. And so it can stretch in one direction up and down, but it's not really good at stretching left and right. So that's why lateral movement will often rip a tendon or ligament. They just weren't built to stretch sideways, but they're good at stretching lengthwise. The third category of connective tissue is specialized connective tissue. So this is a bunch of stuff that's made in your body, and it's manufactured by or has similarities to connective tissue, but you're going to see they perform a lot of different functions. So specialized connective tissues include cartilage, bone, adipose or fat, and blood. Cartilage is rubbery, and it serves as shock absorbers between bones. So you have cartilage in between some of your bones. So when they rub together, they're pushing against the cartilage, and that cuts down on friction. So you've got cartilage between the bones of your upper and lower leg, for example. And then you also have cartilage in other places. So your ear, the outside part of your ear, and then your nose. If you reach up and grab your nose right now, or grab your ear, you can wiggle them around pretty good. And they're kind of flexible and rubbery. And again, that's because they're mostly made out of cartilage. Cartilage doesn't have a lot of blood vessels in it, and the cells aren't undergoing mitosis. So if you injure cartilage, it's oftentimes a long-term injury. It doesn't heal very well. And that's just because it's a shock absorber and it's not really structured in a way to repair itself. So not a lot of blood supply there. Bone tissue is connective tissue that gets hardened. Actually, your bones begin as cartilage, and then as you age, they mineralize and become hard. So when you were born, when you were a little baby, you were pretty rubbery because you were mostly cartilage. But then as you got older, that cartilage gets replaced by bone, and you gain more support, and that allows you to walk and jump on a trampoline and so on. So bone is formed basically by these cells that secrete this calcium matrix and get trapped in it. And then a lot of times some of those cells will even die. So a bone is made out of this network of calcium. Right? And that's what makes it hard and strong. Your bone, blah, 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 would interact with muscles. They protect internal organs. So think of your bones protect you. Your bones also make blood. So some of your bones have bone marrow in the middle, and that's where a lot of your different types of cells can get manufactured. We'll talk more about bones. We've got a whole lecture on the skeletal system. Another type of specialized connective tissue is adipose. So this is fat tissue, and the reason your body makes fat is to store energy. So if you get a bunch of calories and it's more calories than you're using at the time, then your body will store them for later use as fat tissue. And your body's smart about it. It doesn't put fat anywhere. It puts it in strategic places. So it'll put fat around your organs to help cushion them. So when you're jumping on that trampoline, your organs aren't bumping into each other. The motion is cushioned by the fat. You'll put fat on your gluteus maximus. So when you're sitting down watching an amazing biology video on YouTube, it provides some nice cushioning. Blood is another type of specialized connective tissue. Again, the reason it's a connective tissue is it's made by bone, and bone is made by cartilage. So you can see how these are kind of connected. But anyway, blood is a transport medium, and it's fluid. That shouldn't be a surprise. Blood is actually pretty complicated. It's got a lot of different cellular components in it. It's got red blood cells, like you can see here. Little donut-shaped cells, and they carry oxygen around. They're like an inner tube for oxygen to ride in. You have white blood cells, which help fight off infections. So they're like the policemen and women of your body. They're patrolling, looking for bad guys. Platelets are like little construction workers in your blood, and if you do get a cut or an injury, then platelets all join hands and create a clot so your blood doesn't keep leaking out. And so it basically seals off the wound so you can repair it. The third type of tissue is muscle. So muscle tissue will contract when it's stimulated to do so. There's three types of muscle tissue: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is found in your stomach and your bladder and your uterus, those of you that have a uterus. And it is a muscle that that it doesn't stretch in one direction like skeletal muscle, which we'll see on the next slide, but it's good at stretching and contracting in multiple directions. So maybe the best example of that is if you think about a bladder, your bladder. Here's a picture of a bladder, right? So these tubes are connected to your, these are the ureters, they're attached to your kidneys, and so urine is produced and sent to the bladder. As more and more urine goes in the bladder, it's going to stretch in every direction like a water balloon that's filling up. And so the smooth muscle will allow it to stretch out and get bigger. And then eventually it sends a signal to your brain. Your brain's like, okay, I got to use the bathroom. And so then when you go to the bathroom, your bladder will squeeze. So that balloon will squeeze in every direction and shrink and force the urine out the urethra. So smooth muscle is good at contracting, like shrinking and squeezing. Right? Smooth muscle is also found in the gut, so it helps squeeze your gut and push food through or solid waste. It's also found in your arteries, so you can control the diameter of your arteries, in part because there's smooth muscle there, and it can contract to make your arteries smaller and increase your blood pressure. And I'm kind of going backwards here, and smooth muscle can also contract slowly, but it can contract for a long time. So if you think about delivering a baby, so a lady it gives birth to a baby, and the baby is inside the uterus, and during labor that uterus is going to contract for oftentimes hours and hours and hours, like over and over and over again. And so smooth muscle is good at doing that. And basically the uterus kind of acts like the bladder. Just instead of squeezing out urine, it squeezes out a baby. And it's kind of a gross image. I apologize. Smooth muscle, the last bullet point here, smooth muscle can be controlled voluntarily. So you can control, sometimes, you can control when your bladder contracts and you go pee-pee, but it takes training. So a little, a 1-year-old hasn't figured out how to control their bladder yet, and it takes training. Their brain has to learn to control it and to listen to the signals from it about when you need to go to the bathroom. Skeletal muscle is the second type of muscle, so it attaches to bone, and basically it's made up of these repeating muscle fibers, and these muscle fibers are good at contracting in a particular direction. We'll talk about that in a future lecture. Skeletal muscles are contracted voluntarily, although you also need to practice controlling them. So if you've ever seen a little baby, it kind of flings its arms and legs around. It's not very good at walking. And so it takes a while for your brain and your nervous system to figure out how to control your skeletal muscles in a way that's coordinated. Cardiac muscle is a special type of muscle that's only found in your heart. And so it is an involuntary muscle, so you can't control it. Instead, it's controlled by these little pacemaker nerves. We'll talk about that later too. And so your body basically on its own controls the beat of your heart. Cardiac muscle is really good at contracting. It gets into a rhythm and it contracts. And maybe you've seen, like in movies, Indiana Jones Part 2, for example, like if a heart is removed from a human body, it'll keep beating on its own. So it's a pretty self-sufficient organ. And you can even cut cardiac muscle off of a heart and put it into a petri dish, and it'll keep contracting until it runs out of energy. So it's just kind of this like little machine that just keeps contracting rhythmically. Cardiac muscle, because it's going to contract all the time, right? Your heart beats all day, every day. It's got a lot of mitochondria. Why? Why would your heart have a lot of mitochondria? Because it's beating all the time. So it needs a bunch of ATP, and so therefore it needs oxygen all the time. So if your heart doesn't get oxygen for a short period of time, you're going to have a heart attack, and because your cardiac muscle can't get the oxygen, it can't make ATP, so it doesn't have energy to contract. So you got to make sure your heart has a constant flow of oxygen. The fourth type of tissue is nervous tissue. So this is a tissue that's made up of really specialized cells called neurons. And there's some support cells too. Neurons are cells that are good at receiving an electrical signal and then transmitting it. So you've got billions of neurons that are all linked together in these long nerve fibers. And every time you have a thought or think of a memory or form a word, then there are patterns of neurons firing in your brain. Every time you move a muscle, that muscle is moving because it was stimulated to move by a signal from the nerves that are attached to it. So you have long nerves made up of neurons that stretch throughout your body, and they're playing different roles. They're detecting heat or cold, they're detecting movement, they're reporting pain, they're allowing you to think, whatever. And again, neurons can pass electrical signals along them. So they're kind of like electrical wires throughout your body. I put this chart on here because it's handy. You can look at the PowerPoint on Canvas, and this looks really overwhelming, but it's not bad. Here's the 4 types of tissue here, and then subtypes if there are subtypes, and then characteristics and examples. So you can see that between these 4 types of tissues and their specialized categories within each type, that makes up pretty much every part of the human body. Right? So you should be able to think of just about anything and figure out what kind of tissue it's made out of. All right, and then skin and hair. So let's talk about skin really quickly. So I mentioned that skin is your largest organ, and it does all these cool things. It can grow, it can stretch, it helps prevent water from leaking out. Skin can actually make vitamin D, so if you sit out in the sunshine, your body can absorb some of that sunlight and convert it into vitamin D. That's pretty cool. It helps cool you off by sweating. It helps you interact with the outside world. It protects you from pathogens and can self-repair. So again, skin's pretty cool. Skin is made up of 2 main layers, the epidermis and the dermis. So if you look at the image, this is the epidermis and then this is the dermis. The epidermis is made out of epithelial tissue, and then the dermis has all sorts of different types of tissue in it. It's got nervous tissue, it's got glands, it's got, there's a layer of adipose down here, and there's smooth muscle maybe in here. There's parts of your cardiovascular system like veins and arteries. There's nerves, so there's a lot going on in the dermis. There's hair follicles, which we'll talk about more in the next slide, that produce hair. And so the epidermis is the outermost layer, the dermis is the lower layer. If you ever heard of different degrees of burns, primary, secondary, and 3rd degree burns, that's just talking about how much of your skin got burned off. So a 1st degree burn, you just burned off like some of these epithelial cells, and it's going to be painful, but it's going to heal pretty quickly. 3rd degree burn, you've burned down through the dermis too, so that's bad, and that's a lot harder to heal. Hair. You know what hair is. You got some growing on the top of your head, and hair is formed by specialized cells in the epidermis called follicles. And basically these cells divide really quickly. They undergo mitosis at a rapid rate, and as they divide, they're adding more cells. So your hair grows because of mitosis. The end of a strand of hair is the oldest. It got formed, weeks or months ago, depending on how long, or years ago, depending on how long your hair is. And that means that the cells at the bottom of a strand of hair are the youngest. Hair is mostly made out of keratin. So this is a tough protein, and it exists in long fibers in the cells that are formed by hair. So that makes your hair really tough and basically dead. Your hair, that's why you can get a haircut and it doesn't hurt. The keratin is found in hair and gives it strength, and keratin is the same protein that we find in fingernails and in the antlers and horns of animals and in hooves and things like that. So it's a really tough molecule. If you have curly hair or straight hair, that's dependent upon slight changes in the molecular bonds on the hair, the strands of hair itself. So if you have curly hair, then you have these bonds that kind of link together and form curls. And if you have straight hair, it's because your hair doesn't really interact with itself. It doesn't bond. So if you want to straighten your hair, then you apply heat, and that heat denatures the proteins a little bit and keeps it straight, but eventually the hair will start curling again. I don't know if that made any sense. I hope it did, because that's the end of the lecture. Later.